Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Marketing for the Uninhibited podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of my very dear friends. You all know I used to live in Virginia, and Amber is like family. And so I'm so excited to have Amber Reilly on the podcast today. She is the VP of Mozaic Group, and she's here to talk all about market research and how to put together and conduct a great survey, which is all of you should be doing this time of year anyway, or at least maybe first of the new year. So welcome to the podcast, Amber. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Just a little bit of background on Mozaic Group. We are a full-service market research firm. We specialize in the area of technology. So really working with both business clients and consumer clients, to try to understand their preferences towards different kinds of technology. How receptive are they to new technology that is being released? How can we optimize what's currently on the market to better meet their needs? And so forth. We are fully virtual, even pre-COVID. We've all worked from home. So this was, the shift to working from home, while has been a great thing for us to research, was pretty old hat for us because we've been doing it forever.
And how long have you been there now?
It was 6 years in June.
Oh my goodness, 6 years. Congratulations.
I don't know how it went by that fast.
I don't know either. I mean, I guess I've been, it's 2021. So that makes sense because I think I've been back home in Illinois for almost 6 years, like 5.5.
Honestly?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Okay. I didn't think it had been that long.
Yeah. Wow. Time flies. So today so what we have outlined for you all listening is Amber is going to educate us on market research and the different types of research. And then we are actually going to, in real time, edit the survey that I send out to my audience. So you all will get a case study and some real life examples. So do you want to start by just explaining what market research is and the different types?
Absolutely. So at its core, the entire field of market research, the goal is just to better understand and gather information about consumer preferences. The information that we gather through market research can really help a business just better understand their target audience, like who they're going after, help make really important business decisions, like do I release that product or this? Do I use this tagline or that tagline? Do I roll out this logo or that logo? It's also really helpful to identify issues before they become catastrophic problems. So often clients will come to me and say, hey, this particular product is just not selling the way that I thought. And I really want to understand what is it about this product, or maybe the way that I'm marketing this product, or the way that I'm pricing or positioning this product. What is it about that's making it not sell as well? So I kind of identify and rectify the problem before it becomes this huge catastrophic can't go back issue, but also just kind of uncover new opportunities as well. So, like I said, at the end of the day, the goal is just to really understand who your consumers are and their preferences, what they like, what they don't like, and be able to tailor your marketing and your product offering from there.
Yes, I think that's so important because especially in the entrepreneurial world, it can feel sometimes more vulnerable, I think, to ask for that feedback because it's a direct reflection of maybe something you've created or something you've put out there. But what I like about what we're talking about today is that you can automate the process. So it doesn't feel so much about like me asking you personally what you think about what I'm doing, but kind of just the process you have in place to evaluate your services or products. So what types of research do you conduct? I know you have the in-depth interviews and then qualitative and quantitative Well, you're going to explain the difference between all of those.
Yep. So market research, the whole field can really be boiled down into two distinct buckets. We have the qualitative aspect of market research, which is like a personal passion of mine, because I'm a moderator as well. And so generally I'm on your side of the camera moderating interviews and focus groups, not so much on this side. But qualitative basically means you are speaking to fewer people, but for a longer amount of time. And it's very open-ended. It's not something where you're asking rating scale questions like the typical, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like ice cream? It's really more like sitting down and having a discussion. So qualitative qualitative, fewer people, longer amount of time, usually an hour, 2 hours for a focus group or something like that, really open-ended. The researcher will go into that with a list of objectives or questions that they really want to come away with. But overall, it's just like, let's sit back and have a conversation so that I can understand. The important thing to know about qualitative research, though, is that it's very directional in nature, not necessarily something that you would want to base significant business decisions on because it's such a few amount of people.
Right.
So if you have 100 customers and you talk to 2 of them for an hour each, and they both say they love this particular product, you wouldn't want to go and make 10,000 of those because that's the opinion of 2 people as opposed to your whole universe of customers and potential customers. So it's very directional in nature. These are, like you said, your in-depth interviews where it's just a one-on-one, or it's a focus group where you've got one to many, but overall just fewer people, longer amount of time, very directional. Yeah. And then you have the other bucket, which is quantitative. And quantitative is what most people are probably very familiar with. That's the survey that you'll probably get in your email saying like, hey, click here on this link to take this 5-minute survey to tell us about your recent trip to Target or whatever it may be. Quantitative is generally much shorter. We're talking about minutes, not hours. And you're sending it to a lot of people because what you want there is that statistical significance behind the data that you collect. And that is what allows you to make those business decisions because you feel like you've spoken to a representative percentage of the entire population that you can feel really confident in basing business decisions because you've talked to so many people.
Right. So with the qualitative, with the in-depth research, in an entrepreneurial setting or a small business setting, what would you use that research, like the result of the research to do? Like what if it's, because we're not going to obviously take one person's opinion and then make 10,000 products or, adjust your services over here, but how does it inform the businesses or the clients that you work with?
That's a good question. I think especially in that entrepreneurial world, it is getting just honest and open feedback about your business, especially with folks, as you start to build your customer base, being able to speak to them and understand what was their experience like? What did they truly enjoy about the experience with you and your company versus where would they perhaps make some changes? In an ideal world, how would the experience have gone? And what you would generally use in the work that I do, generally qualitative comes before the quantitative. And so what I would do is say like, all right, I know that I want to do this big survey. It's the end of the year and I want to wrap up 2021 with some great feedback from my clientele. I don't really know where to start with my survey. So maybe I conduct a handful of in-depth interviews just to understand what are some of the common themes that I start hearing from these interviews. And can I then translate that information into a survey to really help validate what you started hearing in the qualitative?
I really like that idea. So as a small business owner, or in your case, how are you selecting the candidates to do the in-depth interviews? Like, do I just cherry pick the ones that I know? I feel like that could be a little biased.
Yes. And so it depends on the particular project that I'd be working on with Mozaic Group. We actually go through recruitment panels throughout the US. There's a bunch of really good ones. And we start out with a list of criteria. I know that I want to speak to adults who have a computer and maybe they purchased that computer in the past 12 months. And they consider themselves to be a decision maker in the household. So that is the way that I typically find it. But from the small business perspective, if you are looking at your pool of customers for the year, you don't want to just cherry pick, right? Because then that in itself is going to create some inherent bias. Mm-hmm. If you only pick people who are your bestest of friends and you had a great experience, you're not going to get that feedback that helps you improve. And so I would sit down and take a very good, honest look at your book of business for the year and reach out to all different kinds of people who were a repeat customer for that year, people who were a brand new customer for that year, people who, not that we want to wish this on anybody, had, maybe not the best experience, who maybe filed a complaint or they returned something or just weren't overly satisfied or chose to not renew for the year. And that way you get this full spectrum, this very well-rounded perspective of, the positive ones. What was so positive about that experience so that you can start to think, how do I replicate that moving forward?
Right.
The negative ones, and again, not that we wish that, but they happen, right? Yeah. Reaching out to those people and saying like, hey, I want to understand what went wrong here, because then you can start to formulate things to avoid. The new ones, to reach out to them and say, I really want to understand, like, this was our first engagement. How did you find me? How did you find my company? What was this first experience like? And that way you come away with it with this very well-rounded perspective of, the good, the bad, the ugly, the new, the old, and not just getting the good news. Because as great as the good news is to hear, it doesn't help you improve.
It doesn't. You don't have those areas to say, okay, this is where, like, consistently these people said that I was missing the mark here, or that they thought the service would do this and it didn't fulfill those things. And so how do we, like, where's the disconnect there? And I think that is really important. And it also gives you, like, the words they're using to describe what you do and how they consume whatever it is you offer. And I think that is so helpful when it comes to tailoring your marketing messaging to make sure that you are speaking to the right people.
Right, absolutely. And I tell my clients all the time, like, it's one thing to get positive feedback. That's so incredibly helpful. But if I'm moderating a focus group or if I'm moderating an interview, I will tell the person on the other end of the camera or the other end of the conference table, back when we used to do this in person, like, hey, like, let's just be super candid with me. As helpful as it is to hear the good things, I want to hear the rough stuff too. Like, tell me where, even if something didn't go wrong, where could things have been improved even just a little bit? Right. Because then you hear it from their perspective of, one, how, like you said, how do they talk about your business? How do they talk about their experience? Because you know how you talk about it. You know how you position yourself in your company, but you don't necessarily get to see it through their eyes as often.
Right. Oh, this is so good, because I feel like it's something you can take and you can implement right away. So let's shift gears to what I think most people will be doing this time of year, which is sending surveys.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit more about, like, because we went back and forth in our voice notes in preparation for the podcast, all about how to put together a survey that's going to be unbiased and also engaging, so that they're going to take the survey and you're going to get the feedback. Because there's nothing worse than, like, sending out all these surveys and getting 2 people. Like Spotify. Spotify released a report a few months ago. It was in October, before they did their, like, Unwrapped for the end of the year. And they have, I forget, I don't know, like 8 million monthly subscribers or something ridiculous. And for this report that they released, they had done 6 months of research, April to October, and they only had 400 respondents. So that is not very representative, but yet they published this entire report and they had like statistics and recommendations for businesses and brands. So it was interesting. The information they published was interesting, but I think it's always important to understand, like, the pool of respondents, and how many there are, where they're getting them. So let's talk. Yeah, let's dive into all of this.
Okay. So quantitative, when you start to sit down and you start thinking about writing a survey to issue to your customer base, there's a bunch of things that you need to keep in mind. One, we want to keep it brief. Right? Like, these people, like, you are asking them for feedback. They are doing you a favor. They don't have to do this. They are being generous with their time and their thoughts and their opinions. So we don't want to take up too much of their precious time. We know everybody's freaking busy, especially this time of year. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody's busy. So let's make sure that we are being as least burdensome as we can. So if we can keep it 5 minutes or less, I think that is a great place to start. Not every survey is going to lend itself to that, but if you can keep it under 5 minutes, you are making their job easier. And that's going to be our goal here. Let's make their job of taking this survey as easy and enjoyable as possible. You also want to be super careful with how you craft your invitation. Most of these people, you're going to be sending them probably a link in an email. And so you want to make sure that you're covering some specific things in that email. One, reaching out to them by name. You can do this via a mail merge, but also explaining what it is that you're doing, just in very human terms, saying like, hey, it's been a fantastic year. Thank you so much for being one of my customers, my clients. As we start to wrap up 2021, I want to understand what went well, where we can improve, and be able to kick off 2022 with a fresh start. Set expectations for how long you expect the survey to take them. Again, saying, hey, if you click this link, take the survey. It should take you no more than 5 minutes. And then just talk about if you plan to anonymize the data, letting them know like, hey, we're not attributing this data to any one person. All the data will be reviewed, kind of in the aggregate, just so I can understand where the company needs to improve as a whole. And then just being like sincerely thankful that they're being able to give you that time.
And we were talking about this in the voice notes too. So if you want to leave like an open-ended question at the end where you can capture like a testimonial that you can share on social media or an email for selling purposes, you suggested just leaving like a box where if it's okay, if I use their name or the name of their business, they can just like pop that in there too. Right.
Absolutely. Because like I totally understand the value of testimony when it comes to the small business. And so if at the end of the survey, you want to include something saying like, hey, again, thank you so much for this. Would it be, if you are okay with me attributing some quotes to you or so forth, or to the name of your business about your experience with me and with my company, just indicate yes or no here, and then you can have them fill out their details. But that leaves it in their hands. Yeah. They get to decide how their name, how their business name, and how their testimony is being used.
Okay, I love this. So the last thing before we look at my survey, which I think you're going to have so much fun.
I'm so excited.
What we talked a little bit about incentives too. And so I did share this with one of my clients who's running a survey this week. And we went back and forth about how to incentivize that. And you mentioned a few different options. So I think one of the things, obviously, you said you could send a link, like here's $5 off, here's a coupon code for my shop, but we have no control over that link once it's out there.
Once it's out there in the universe, there are entire websites dedicated to coupon codes. I'm a big fan of coupon codes. I will look up something before I hit like add to cart and checkout. I'll be like, ooh, let me see if there's a coupon code. So I would say if you are going to be so kind as to offer an incentive, that's hugely helpful. Everybody appreciates something like that. Obviously, it's not mandatory. And a lot of the work that I do when I do that kind of quantitative sampling, that is out of my hands entirely. But when you are directly reaching out to your customers and you want to offer them a small token of appreciation for your products and your services, that may help boost engagement, that may help boost your response rate. And so in that case, I would just be very thoughtful on how you do it. Generally, there's either you offer the incentive to every single person that you email to and say, hey, if you complete this survey by X date, whatever day you want to set as your cutoff to start analyzing your data, then enter your email address at the end of the survey, and I will send you whatever your incentive may be, a $5 off coupon or whatever it is. Or the other alternative is to offer a larger reward, but have it more of a drawing. And so saying, hey, again, would love for your feedback. out of everybody who completes the survey by this date, I will do a drawing and send out $100 gift card to 3 people.
Yeah.
So higher incentive, lower probability,
Right.
Versus lower incentive, guaranteed incentive.
And do you think that makes a difference or in how people respond? Like if the probability is lower, are they less likely to respond?
Generally, in my experience, it's that guarantee that is going to be more helpful. If you say, hey, do this 5-minute survey and I'll send you a $5 coupon code to my shop, that's a guarantee. In my experience, that yields a little bit more likelihood versus the, hey, if you fill out this 5-minute survey, you might, I don't know how many people this is going to, you might win this $100 gift card.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then the last thing before we pull up mine is the types of questions. So we just ran through in the voice notes talking about not having double-barreled questions. So like, how much do you like, you said cookies and ice cream, because maybe I hate ice cream, but I love cookies. So that's difficult to answer. And then we were talking about not having too many open-ended questions. Like this isn't a college application.
This is not your term paper. This is not your final bank of essays. So the whole point of the quantitative portion of market research when you do this survey is to actually get some hard data back. And the way that we do that is by crafting questions that generally are on some kind of scale, or you have some predetermined set of answers. These are not random words that people are just typing in. It is actually predetermined answer choices that you will program into your survey, because on the back end, with whichever survey platform you're using, you'll be able to chart that and see what the data really looks like. And so some of the key tenets are, again, make the participants, your customer's job, as easy as possible. Make the question very easy to understand exactly what you're looking for, and make the answer choices very clear and distinct, so they don't have to worry that they're doing it wrong. Nobody wants to, and I think I said this in our voice notes, nobody wants to take a test and feel like they're doing a bad job, or feel like they're stupid, or feel like they just don't understand, because what's going to happen, they're going to close out of that survey, they're going to delete your email, and they're going to walk away. So make it very clear and very easy what you're looking for and what the answer choices are. And then the double-barreled one is one of the first things they teach you when you start studying market research, is to only assess one metric at a time. And so the example we gave was on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is do not like at all, and 5 is absolutely love, or extremely like. How much do you like cookies and ice cream? That's a double-barreled question. That's 2 very distinct things. Like you said, you could have one answer for cookies, one answer for ice cream. And so in that case, we need to be 2 completely separate questions.
Okay.
And then open-ended questions. So these scale questions, these answer choices, those are what we would call a closed end. It's something very predefined. You've written that as part of your survey. You've programmed it in. But some people like to roll a little bit of qualitative into their survey, which you can absolutely do by saying, hey, in your own words, can you tell me, what you really loved about working with me this year? That allows them just to free write. But what we don't want to do, which flying right in the face of making their job easier, is give them 3 dozen open-ended questions where you're expecting paragraphs of information. So if you're going to include those open-ended questions, we just want to make sure that we're keeping them, to a minimum, no more than a couple. That way they feel like this survey was easy to take. It was enjoyable. I got to lend my feedback in a way that I understood what was being asked of me. It was very easy to answer, and I don't feel like I'm taking a test.
Okay, I love that. And it brings me, we can talk about it when we look at mine, because I leave some of those open-ended ones, like I don't mark them as required in the survey. So then they don't have to answer it. Like it's open-ended, but they can go ahead and finish the survey if they want without answering it. Or I've had some people just put like NA if they don't feel it's relevant.
And that is perfectly acceptable. Making, not forcing people to answer questions that they are uncomfortable with or that they don't understand. That's a great way to just say like, hey, you can skip this if you want to. Like, I still value your feedback, even if you can't think of an answer right now to this one question.
Okay, that's great. All right, I think I can share my screen with you while we're recording. And oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. I love it.
And I put Amber up there, so we know this is, all right. So this is something that I send out. I use Google Forms right now. And because I like how they tally the data, like we can just, I just created this so you wouldn't see data. But right here, well, anyway, they can't see what we're talking about. So it says feedback from Miranda and marketing for the Uninhibited 2021. So let's just start with the title of the survey.
Okay.
What do you suggest?
I think that this is fantastic. Okay. And I'm sure in the email invite that you have sent, you've probably set the stage of, hey, this is what this link is going to lead to. This is what I'm looking for. So this is a perfect title. And I love the subtext, especially because you are starting with the thank you. Again, like, they're doing you a favor by filling this out. And so we want to make sure that we are being super gracious, that they are spending the time to fill this out. The one recommendation that I would have, if it's not already in the email, but it always helps to reiterate, is how long you think this would take them. So if you wanted to say, again, this should take no more than X number of minutes of your time. And that just kind of, again, helps remind them, I'm not going to be here forever. I can fit this in my very busy day. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. We're going to do 5 because we're going to streamline this. I know
we like it.
Yes. Okay. So then, and right away I have business name, but it's not required. So, and first name, but I'm thinking based on our conversation, we should move those to the end.
I would move those to the end, only because sometimes those very stark questions right up front can be a little off-putting. And so we want to make sure that we're walking into this survey, making people feel very, very comfortable. Just like I never ask, I try to never ask, age right off the bat. Like the first question that you ask, how much do you weigh? How old are you? Like things that people might be like, wow, if this is the first question, how invasive are we going to get here?
Right. Okay. Moving it down.
Easing them in and making them feel very comfortable.
All right. And then, so the purpose of this survey, if people haven't received it, is really, I send this after we've completed a service together. So any interaction, whether it's the first time or the third time, like if the time is up, then I like to send the survey. And then I will send, it's just kind of like a recap. It's a nice way for me to gather information. And I'm going to send one more at the end of the year. So now the first question, since we moved the name and the business name to the end, is how did you hear about marketing for the Uninhibited? And I left it open.
And so there's a couple ways that we can adjust this if we want to. So if you have certain avenues with which you market to your customers, to your clients, then what we might want to do is actually alter this to be a closed-ended, but we add an other specify if that is allowed. I'm not super familiar with Google. We do have an other. Yes. So then this would be Instagram, Facebook, recommendation from another, recommendation from someone, all the things. It's because what helps this is that on the back end, instead of having to read through all of these verbatim answers, you actually have some hard-coded things, but then you always give people this additional other specify, because they could have run into you, at a farmer's market and somehow you all struck up a conversation. Yeah. And so adding that other is a great way to still get that closed-ended data. And right now, the way that you have this, I think you have it as a single choice. So they couldn't say Instagram and Facebook. They would have to say one. And that way you can isolate the data and actually attribute a specific percentage to that avenue, but still give them the catch-all if they don't fall neatly into one of those buckets. Okay, that's great. And do you think, sometimes I worry about overwhelming them with choices, or I've had people tell me like, well, I just can't remember. Like, I can't remember if it was Instagram or it was Facebook. So in that case, they would either
just pick one, right?
Yep.
Okay. Or
so what we would do underneath the other, I would add a don't remember, can't recall, or something like that. And so that way you just want to give them, again, nobody wants to look at this and be like, oh, shoot, I don't fit in neatly to any of these boxes.
Right.
Maybe this just isn't for me. I'm going to walk away. And then you've lost your opportunity to gather that data.
Yes.
So if you give them the don't remember, that it's a perfectly viable answer. I don't know what I had for breakfast yesterday. So that is perfectly acceptable.
Exactly. So do you think, okay, along that same thought, if I were to say like Instagram paid ad or is that diving too deep?
Yep. Okay. That's going to be probably too deep.
Got it.
And it also, to one of your other points, starts adding things to the list. We never want to overly burden someone with a list. The general rule, if you have to scroll, that's too many.
Okay. Okay. So I think we're good. So what I added is Instagram, Facebook, referral from someone, networking event, free workshop, or don't remember, and then other, which is okay.
Perfect.
So moving on. So then I always want to know, are you a repeat client or a new client?
Yep. I think that's perfectly fine. If we need to, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So that should be, they should know if they had worked with you for the first time or if they'd worked with you many times. So in that case, you don't need a don't know. Okay. You don't need an other because there's really no other option there.
I don't know how. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, perfect.
Beautiful.
All right. And then the next one, how have you worked with marketing for the Uninhibited this year? Select all that apply.
Yes.
So we have the one-on-one 90-minute service, monthly coaching, first time, repeat monthly coaching, free workshop, podcast guest, pay what you can coaching.
Yep, absolutely. And so again, if you can watch the transition of the answer boxes, this again is something that we would consider like a multi-choice, a multi-select, where it's not isolated to one specific answer. The one thing that you may want to add, only if there is another way that they could have worked with you this year, would be to toss in that other category.
Okay. There could have been, there could be something.
There could have been like the random one-off here and there, and that way they'll be able to kind of fill all those out.
Perfect. Okay. And I think for full disclosure, Amber helped me with my survey once a while ago. So this is like,
it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been reformatted, but okay, this one, if you did a jump start, which is a one-time service offering I have. So if you did that, but did not move forward with marketing coaching, which is the 6-month commitment, can you please explain why you chose not to? And again, I didn't make it required.
Yeah. And so this kind of question is one that we would traditionally apply logic or branching to. Again, that's going to be the ability to do so is going to be fully dependent on the platform that you use to issue your survey. But in this case, if we scroll up to the question just above, so the way that I would restrict that question is only if in the previous question they selected Jumpstart, but not marketing coach. So like, let's say Uninhibited Jumpstart is answer choice 1. The first timer monthly is 2, and the repeat client is 3. I would only show that particular question to those who said 1 Jumpstart, but did not check the box for 2 or 3, the first time or repeat client. And that way you are only getting questions that apply directly to you. That being said, I don't know if that is a function of this.
I don't think I can do conditions.
Okay. So if you can't do conditional formatting, that is completely fine. And so in that case, I would add a little bit of subtext here, if we can, saying, if this does not apply to you, please move forward to the next question. Okay. Just so that they know, hey, this may not be, because what if they look at this and say, I was a podcast guest. Right. I went to a free workshop. I don't even know if this applies to me. That way they feel comfortable saying, nope, I don't identify with that particular, bucket. I'm just going to go ahead and move forward.
Perfect. That's great. Okay. Next one. What expectations did you have going into a 6-month marketing coaching commitment? This is very open-ended and vague, so help me.
Absolutely. And so again, this is probably only applicable to those who actually entered a 6-month marketing coaching commitment. And so in that case, again, if we can't use some conditional formatting to skip other people past that question, then we would just want to add some text that says, hey, if this does not apply to you, please feel free to move forward. And that way they don't feel like they need to answer this question, which brings up a whole other idea. If in your database of customers, if you have this particular bucket that for a fact in 2021 were in a 6-month marketing coaching commitment, then you make a survey just for them.
Yeah. Okay.
If you know people were just a podcast guest, and that way, there's nothing wrong with having multiple flavors of surveys because you have multiple flavors of audiences. And so if you need to create a new link, because you can't do that conditional formatting, then that way the survey that each of those audiences is getting is exactly, tailored to them. And then on your end, we have to smash the data all together. Yeah. But that's perfectly doable.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a great idea. And I wrote that down because in the questions I would ask would probably be a little different, right? So for a podcast guest, I want to know what they thought of the onboarding process, what they thought of the recording process, what they thought of the promotion process, did they share it or not? Why not? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea. All right. So we'll fix that for now. If it doesn't apply, feel free. But I think what I'm going to do is break this out into 3 surveys. So we have long-term commitment for the high ticket offer, podcast guests, and then all others over here.
Perfect.
One-offs over there. Okay. So then the next one is, so I feel like you can see right here, we have long answer, long answer, long answer, long answer, long answer, long answer, long answer. So we probably need to streamline these somewhere.
Agreed.
So this one says, please share your proudest marketing moment this year. And this is what I was really thinking for like a feedback, something I could share to people. It's results driven.
I love this question. Okay. And so I think a really good rule of thumb, if you are sitting down and evaluating which, long answer questions you want to ask, go through and pick your top 3 that would be most impactful to you as a small business owner. What would be the most helpful information? Not just a nice to have, but something that is truly important that you truly want to walk away from this research experience having an answer to. Anything else, let's look at how we might be able to convert it to a closed-end question that is easier to answer.
Okay, so we'll have to decide in the next few where we do that. Because so that one we're going to keep. This next one, I also like for the reasons we were talking about previously, where you also need some of the constructive criticisms, like you need that to improve. So the next question is there anything you haven't achieved that you thought you would by working with a marketing coach?
Yep, absolutely. I like that one.
And then these 2, I think, or the next 3, we can kind of restructure. So what's one thing that surprised you about working with a marketing coach?
And so this is a really good one. But this might be something that if you chose to do a few qualitative, in-depth interviews prior to this, and you asked this question of those people, you might start to hear some common themes like, I didn't realize how easy it was, or how much it would impact my business, or how affordable it really was. And so from those in-depth interviews that you do before you even write this survey, you can start to turn that into a list that makes it very easy to answer. But then we add that other specify at the end where people can still use it as a catch-all if they want to.
Got it. Okay. I think that's really helpful because I do want to conduct, especially after talking to you, some of these in-depth interviews where this would be a nice addition, and then we can come back and add it in. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the next one, do you have any advice or ways to improve the services offered for future clients? For example, length of meetings, follow-up and or communication in between meetings, etc.
Yep. And so this is a great candidate for just turning straight into a closed-end but multi-select style question, where the answer choices may be shorter meeting duration or longer meeting duration.
Got it.
A follow-up immediately following a meeting, or these things that in a good rule of thumb is, if I were taking this survey, what might I say?
Right.
And if you think it has a pretty reasonably good possibility of being mentioned, make it an answer choice, but then follow it up with that other.
Got it. I'll have to think about that one too, and then add other. So we'll add other.
Definitely.
I think that's great, because there are specific things I'm looking for here. Like if you tell me I didn't come to the meeting with enough big ideas, that's really not like what we're promising here. So,
and another good thing is how we structure the wording of the question. So right now we're saying, do you have any advice or ways to improve the services offered for future clients? Mm-hmm. Do you is yes or no? Do I? Nope, don't have any. So instead, I would say, what advice do you have? And that way, it's not just saying, do you? Yeah, maybe, or maybe, no, I don't. But it's actually, what is the advice that you have?
Okay. Is that good? Okay, so I said, what advice do you have for improving these service offerings moving forward? And now we have a list where they can check multiple things. So shorter meeting duration, longer meeting duration, follow up immediately. We'll reword that one, but communication between meetings and other.
And again, this is one that you could absolutely have when you do your in-depth interviews. Listen to what those handful of people have to say, and then turn their perspective, their answers into your answer choices for this question.
Perfect. This is good. Okay. And then the next one, who do you think would benefit from working with a marketing coach?
And so this is a good question where we want to be specific about what we're looking for here. Are we looking for business names, contact information, everybody, nobody, my friends, my mom? So being very specific with what kind of information we're looking for here, so they know exactly what is expected of them. And so then being able to, if we say, do you have any, businesses or referrals? That would be one way to do it, but also providing them an out.
Okay.
Like an NA, or even just, I'm not sure with this particular platform, if you can provide that, not applicable, don't have any recommendations, or if you just have to say, this isn't required, you can move forward. Yeah. But either way, just saying like, this is not a requirement. You don't have to go through your Rolodex. And give me all the different businesses. And this is probably another one that I would move to the end.
Okay.
Anything that may require a bit more sensitive information, or may even just be asking for a bit more sensitive information, we move that to the end, because we want to make sure that they don't drop out,
right,
and not finish the rest of the data that you really need.
Okay, so then with this one, where did I put it? I think what's interesting about the way you interpreted it is that I need to reword it, because what I want is like, what type of small business owner do you think would benefit from marketing coaching? So it's like looking for similar characteristics. So like if they say someone who is, a team of one and they're growing, and so it's completely wrong. Okay.
But that is super interesting that I interpret it in one way, which is not at all the way that you had in your head when you were writing it. And so just, again, being very specific, what type of business owner do you think would benefit the most from working with a marketing coach?
Yes.
And so again, this may be the one-man startup. Again, we can reword this, but we turn this into answer choices, saying, company with less than 5 employees that's opened within the past year, an organization that's been around the block for a while that hasn't like a number of employees, but really just trying to say, in your mind, like you've worked with me, you've worked with a marketing coach for the past year. Who in your mind, what kind of business do you think would also really benefit?
Yes. Okay.
And then of course, add that other, because our list is not going to be exhaustive. We don't want them to have to scroll, but that way that serves as the catch-all.
Okay, that's great. And I'll go back and tweak those answers. So we moved that one down, and now where are we? We are here. So the next question is, how do you consume marketing information outside of our meetings? So obviously this is to inform my own content creation and make sure that I'm reaching these people and not exhausting my efforts in a way that they're not even seeing. So we have blog, YouTube, Instagram, email, Facebook, podcast, in person, and other.
And so here my question would be, what do you mean by marketing information? Is this, how do you, in what other ways do you gather marketing advice for your own small business?
Okay, I like that.
Because marketing information is something that could probably be interpreted a lot of ways. Marketing information is me watching commercials on television, right? Or just looking at ads on Instagram. So if you say, in what other ways do you gather marketing advice for your small business outside of your meetings with Marketing for the Uninhibited? And then we can go through here and say, blogs, YouTube, Instagram, email. And I think that is a fantastic list. Again, I would make sure we keep that other, but also add an option for, does not apply, not applicable, because maybe their sole source of marketing advice is only from you.
Yeah.
And so we want to give them that option as well.
Right. And some of them may not have time for anything else.
Absolutely. Again, super busy. So that's a perfectly acceptable answer.
Okay. So this one, are you interested in working with Miranda in any of the, should I say, the other ways below? So we have check boxes again. They can check as many that apply, educational courses, group workshops, voice note, virtual coaching support, being a guest on the podcast, one-time marketing meetings, no monthly commitment involved.
And so I think this is a fantastic question. Again, I would toss in an other.
Oh, right. I think it's...
and I would toss in a not applicable. Maybe right now what they are working with you on is exactly what their appetite is. And that's perfectly acceptable. So being able to give them that out is super helpful. And so then I would say, so we're saying, are you interested in working? Well, maybe I'm interested in working with you in those ways 2 years from now.
Right.
So if we can constrain it and be very specific, and you say, thinking about 2020, your plans for 2022.
Yes.
Are you interested in working with Miranda, in any of the ways below, in addition to, or instead of? This may be dependent on which audience we're looking at right now. If it's the long haulers, the newbies, just the podcast people, the catch-all, but just being very specific in thinking about this particular time frame, put them in that state of mind. What might they be most interested in?
I like that, because that's what I'm curious about, right? Like in the next year, should I be reaching out to you to let you know that I have group workshops available or educational courses available? Like this will help me guide what my content, like what I'm offering and who I'm offering.
100%.
So
so it's just being very specific about what you are looking for from these folks so that they can read that question and know immediately what is expected of them.
Okay.
And what you've done a really fantastic job with all of these, you're not introducing any kind of inherent bias. And so that's one thing that I should have mentioned earlier, is that you don't want to subtly persuade people to answer one way or the other. And so all of the questions that you're asking are very clear and very neutral. And so it's not making them feel pressured, even subconsciously, to answer in a specific way. Like if you said, workshops are great, thinking about your plans for 2022, like that's a very, very overt example. But all of the questions that you have so far are very neutral in their tone, and they don't lean anybody one way or the other, which is also super important.
I'm sure that is your work like a couple of years ago. I'm sure. Okay. And then lastly, and maybe I feel like this question should be moved up. Well, okay. Did you renew your services? So it's vague. And we already asked up on the top if they were a new client or a repeat client.
Right. And this is probably also something that you already know.
Right.
And so if you already have this in your database, I would say toss it.
Okay, toss it. Great. I think, okay, here we go. The next one, please elaborate. Oh, no, we'll just toss it.
Yep, that one can go bye-bye.
Yes. Okay.
But this would be a great thing if we start thinking in-depth interview, if you isolate a specific list of those who chose to not renew their services, you can go through and create a list of questions for an in-depth interview with one of those people to understand what is it that, led them down that path to not renew. And that way you still get that information, but it's not directly from this particular survey where that question may not apply to everybody.
That correct. And I feel like most of the time I have a very good understanding of why they didn't renew. Like they're telling me at the last meeting in our 6-month coaching agreement to say, you know what, I'm just going to take the holidays off. I'm going to focus on family and just selling, and then we'll revisit. So I feel like I have that information most of the time. And then the last question I have that we haven't talked about yet is there anything else you'd like to share? And it's just open-ended.
Yep. And so this is one of those questions. If it can be very easily answered with a yes or a no, we need to reword it. So is there anything else? Nope.
No.
So then we change it to, what else would you like to share about your experiences in 2021 with Miranda and marketing for the Uninhibited? And I might even front load it with, again, thank you so much for taking the time to provide your thoughts. It's hugely helpful to me as a small business. What else? And that way it's not easily answered with that yes or no. But again, we're not requiring it. So if they want to move forward because they just can't think of anything, perfectly okay.
Right.
But it does prime them a little bit more to, one, make them feel like they're being heard and they're being appreciated. And then being prompted to not just say yes or no, but to actually think about what they might want to add here.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. And then we move into number 1, what type of business owner do you think would benefit the most from working with a marketing coach? And then that's not required. The second one is, can I share your testimonial? Yes, with my name and business name. Yes, without it, or no. And then other.
Yeah. And so here is where I might add a little bit more context in saying, what's a good way to phrase it? Just talking about how, as I continue to build my small business, and you relate to your clients, right? Like your clients are small businesses. They understand the power of testimonials.
Yes.
They understand the power of quotes and feedback. And so phrasing the question to say something like, as I continue to build my small business, if you are comfortable with me leveraging some of your quotes as, one of my as one of my clients, that'd be hugely appreciated. But making sure that they don't feel like they have to, of course, but then providing answers like you have here, like, yes, with my name and business name. Yes, without my name and or business name. That's perfectly acceptable. Just so they understand how is it going to be used.
Yes. Okay, that's great. And then we have that. And then I have the option for them to include their first name and their business name.
Yep. And so here I would just make it very clear that this is optional. If you are comfortable, please provide your first name. Otherwise, you can skip this question. And same with the business name.
Got it. Ooh, this is great.
Yay.
Oh my goodness. I can't wait. This is on my list of things to do before the end of the year or by the end of the year. So I'll go back and tweak everything, but that was wonderful. And so do you think that is Amber can see it. I know if you're listening, you can't see it, but this is a good length. Like, how do you test how long it's going to take? Do I just send it to myself?
Take it.
Okay.
Yep. Take it, read every word and every question. Pretend that you are taking it for a friend's small business, somebody that you know truly values your feedback and that you want to be thoughtful about. Yeah. And so literally grab your cell phone, set a timer, go through it from reading that email invitation, clicking on that link, answering the questions like you would for somebody that you care about, and then see where you are from there.
Great. Okay, I will do that today. Thank you so much. Is there anything else, knowing my audience and my business too, that you feel is relevant to share before we wrap up today?
Not that I can think of. I think this has been hugely, entertaining, and just really, really fun to kind of talk through the inner mechanics of qual and quant research. Yeah. So no, I think this has been awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here.